Amidst the maelstrom of modern existence, where daily demands seem to devour every available moment, the pursuit of a sanctuary, a locus of serenity and connection, emerges not merely as a desire, but as an imperative need. All too often, we find ourselves navigating tempestuous seas of anxieties, endless task lists, and the relentless pressure for productivity, thereby losing sight of the more profound dimensions of our being. This disconnection, though commonplace, leaves a subtle yet persistent vacuum, a sensation that something essential is amiss, even when all external circumstances appear to be in order. It is within this very milieu that the practice of daily prayer, imbued with divine presence, presents itself as a vital anchor, a beacon guiding us through the fog of routine and uncertainty. This is not a magical incantation or a perfunctory ritual devoid of meaning, but rather an intentional invitation to carve out space within our hearts and minds for something greater, something that transcends the limitations of our quotidian lives. The singular proposition of this prayerful guide lies precisely in its capacity to organically integrate the sacred into the fabric of ordinary life, transforming moments that might previously have been occupied by anxiety or distraction into precious opportunities for communion and rejuvenation. The challenge many confront when contemplating regular prayer is not a dearth of faith or good intentions, but rather the arduous task of rendering it a consistent and meaningful habit. Life, with its dizzying velocity, frequently propels us into automatism, into the realm of doing rather than being. Worries pertaining to work, familial responsibilities, social obligations, and personal trials can readily obscure our capacity to pause and commune with an inner wellspring of strength and wisdom. This fragmentation of attention and the prioritization of earthly concerns can lead to an ever-widening chasm between ourselves and the divine, engendering a sense of spiritual solitude, even when surrounded by others. Prayer, in its essence, is an act of unification, of drawing the self closer to the divine us, and this journey necessitates intentionality and a deliberately cultivated space for its undertaking. The question is not whether God is present, for theology attests to his omnipresence, but rather whether we are open and receptive to that presence in our daily lives. The difficulty lies in fostering this openness, in establishing an ongoing dialogue that extends beyond discrete supplications to become a continuous current of awareness and surrender. The singularity of this approach to daily prayer lies in its emphasis not merely on supplication or thanksgiving, but on consciously inhabiting the presence of God throughout the day. The objective is not simply to recite words or adhere to a rigid script, but rather to imbue each moment with the awareness that we are not alone, that we are sustained and guided by a loving and omniscient force. This implies a subtle redefinition. Prayer ceases to be an isolated event and transforms into a state of being. The journey initiated with this guide aims to awaken this latent perception, the understanding that divine presence is not something to be sought in remote locales or exceptional circumstances, but rather an accessible reality in the here and now, amidst the most mundane tasks. The promise is not an absence of challenges, but a novel way of confronting them, armed with a serenity that springs from the certainty of constant support and an expanded perspective. Daily life, with its joys and tribulations, its successes and failures, offers the perfect stage for this transformative practice. Instead of viewing each day as a battle to be won or an obstacle to be overcome, we can learn from it as an opportunity to experience the depth of our connection with the Creator. Difficulties that once seemed insurmountable can be viewed in a new light, as invitations to trust more fully, to seek divine wisdom in every decision, or to find strength in the assurance that, even in the darkest hours, God's hand is extended. Similarly, moments of joy and gratitude can be intensified when shared and recognized as divine gifts, further strengthening the bonds of love and dependence upon the source of all goodness. It is in this dance of highs and lows that daily prayer, lived as a constant presence, reveals its true power, not merely to bless the day, but to transform the very experience of living. The efficacy of daily prayer as a catalyst for a more profound and resilient spiritual journey lies in its capacity to foster discernment and wisdom in our everyday decisions and reactions. By cultivating an open channel of communication with the divine, we are not merely seeking solace, but also acquiring a clarity of thought that empowers us to navigate common dilemmas with greater perspicacity. This spiritual intelligence manifests in the ability to distinguish between the transient and the eternal, between a fleeting distraction and a genuine calling. For instance, on a particularly stressful workday, instead of succumbing to frustration or despondency, the practice of prayer can lead us to a reflective pause. In this brief interlude, we can question the root of our irritation, seeking to understand if it stems from unrealistic expectations, an excessive sense of control, or if it signals a need to reevaluate our priorities. This faith-guided self-analysis enables us to respond to adversities not with impulsive reactivity, but with a measured response aligned with higher principles. Furthermore, daily prayer serves as a potent antidote to emotional isolation and a sense of helplessness, fortifying our capacity for adaptive resilience. Life inevitably presents us with moments of loss, disappointment, or uncertainty, situations that can test even the most robust among us. When we cultivate the habit of turning to God in prayer, we are not simply seeking temporary relief, but rather anchoring our identity in something more stable than mutable circumstances. This connection strengthens our inner fortitude, allowing us to face tempests with the conviction that we are not alone. Consider a scenario where a significant project encounters an unexpected setback. Rather than being overwhelmed by defeat, an individual who practices daily prayer can turn to this wellspring of strength, finding not only consolation, but also the clarity to analyze what went awry, learn from the experience, and chart a new course. This is not a denial of pain or disappointment, but rather a transformation of how we experience it, allowing it to become a springboard for growth rather than an abyss of despair. Furthermore, daily prayer fosters the development of an active and expansive perspective of gratitude, reshaping our appreciation for life at deeper levels. In our pursuit of goals and problem solving, it is easy to fall into the trap of focusing solely on what we lack or what needs fixing. However, by integrating the practice of consciously giving thanks for the divine presence and for countless blessings, whether large or small, our worldview broadens. This gratitude is not merely a fleeting sentiment, but a lens through which we perceive the abundance already present in our lives. Consider an ordinary day. Instead of merely going through the motions of routine tasks, prayer can include a moment to give thanks for the opportunity to work, for the health that enables us to carry out our activities, for the relationships that sustain us, or even for the subtle beauty of a sunrise. This constant practice of acknowledgement activates a virtuous cycle, enhancing our satisfaction and well-being, and making us more receptive to perceiving and receiving divine gifts in all their forms. Concurrently, daily prayer cultivates profound humility and self-awareness, essential for continuous spiritual growth. By presenting ourselves before the divine, we acknowledge our limitations, our shortcomings, and our utter dependence on a force that transcends us. This posture of humility liberates us from arrogance and pride, making room for learning and transformation. Instead of clinging to the notion that we possess all the answers, we become more receptive to recognizing where we may be mistaken or where we require guidance. For instance, when confronting an interpersonal conflict, prayer can help us examine our own role in the discord, rather than solely blaming the other party. This introspection, facilitated by connection with the sacred, allows us to act with greater compassion and wisdom in our interactions, mending relationships and promoting peace. The diligent cultivation of daily prayer, particularly